Hey guys, Ryan Lipsey here with Ticor Title, and today we are honored to be joined by Alan Enochs of Enochs Law, a real estate attorney, and he's going to give us a little update on what he's seeing out on the market. And of course, I'm always with...
I'm Haley Collier, Ryan's little partner in crime, and yeah, today we're so excited to be here with John because he's so knowledgeable in the market. Some things that we're seeing a lot more common come up is some wholesaling issues that he's seeing, and we wanted to kind of shine a bright light on that. Like, what is wholesaling, John? Like, what is that?
Well, wholesaling is a term. It's a term of art that describes a certain type of real estate transaction. We call them ABC transactions. It involves three parties. It involves the seller, which we call the A party. It involves a buyer, or what we call an initial buyer, who is in the B position. And then there's the ultimate buyer who actually closes escrow on the property, which we call the C buyer. Okay. There are two contracts involved in a wholesale transaction.
Like a double close?
They typically don't double close because what's happening, you have the AB contract between the seller and the wholesaler buyer. Mm-hmm. That's what we call the purchase agreement, sale agreement, or AB contract. Then the wholesaler, the B buyer, is in contact with a C buyer who wants to buy the property. So what the B buyer will do is enter into a second contract with the C buyer, not to sell the property, but to sell his interest in the contract with the A seller. And so that second contract between B and C is what we call an assignment agreement. So B then assigns his interest in the contract to the C buyer. The C party ultimately purchases the property and takes title to the property.
It's kind of like a wholesaling, like I buy from Juicy Fruit a pack of gum for 50 cents, but I turn around and retail it for $1.50 to the end consumer. Is that about right?
At the end of the day, that's what's happening. But there's a lot in the middle.
There's a lot in the middle, and I think it's a lot more of a complicated process, too, than what people kind of initially think, because like you said, there's two different contracts going on. Sometimes the wholesalers don't always want to disclose the final amount too, because A buyer might get wind of what C buyer, or C buyer might get wind of what A buyer sold it for to B buyer, right? And so
that happens all the time. One of the problems that frequently arises from these transactions that we see really frequently, it has to do with disclosure issues. Mm-hmm. So the way the B buyer sells the A seller on the idea of selling the property is the contract will have language in there that typically says the property is being sold as is, where is, without representations or warranties. And it forgives or relieves the seller of their obligation to make disclosures. Now, there's statutory requirements to make disclosures, and so that creates a problem as it relates to you can't contractually relieve a party of their obligation to disclose.
Real estate law,
to disclose, right.
So that's when the attorney comes in. Alan's an awesome attorney.
Well, what happens is oftentimes then the failure to disclose, the C buyer that ultimately takes down the property discovers issues with the property that, much to his chagrin, that interferes with his profit margin on the property, and then he starts going after the wholesaler, the B buyer, as well as the seller.
A buyer, because they didn't fully disclose everything.
They didn't fully disclose everything, and the lawyers get involved, and it just becomes a hot mess for everybody.
Well, that's why I give the Juicy Fruit example, because we really want to boil it down to basic common denominators. What are three pitfalls that you would suggest our audience, and we have a lot of wholesaling and flipping clients, avoid, or what are the top three things to make sure you do so you don't end up in court or have needing representation?
Due diligence on the property, and even though the wholesaler is not selling the property, the economics of a dispute are such that even if the wholesaler is able to ultimately win, he could end up paying a heavy price in legal fees just simply defending himself, so he's in a position to win. So it's important to have your contracts looked at by a lawyer to make sure that there's an attorney's fees provision in the contract with the C buyer. So if the C buyer turns on you for failing to disclose when you have no obligation to disclose, you have the ability to recover your attorney's fees. Then you have to take a look at the wisdom of an attorney's fees provision as to the seller, because if the seller sues you and you lose, then you have to pay the seller's legal fees.
And you help agents and wholesalers and flippers navigate through these murky waters?
We do. We do represent, most of our clients are real estate entrepreneurs, and most of those are wholesalers. So we represent the people that are either investing in the property or actually wholesaling the property.
So you say, look, you're entering a warfare or a fertile ground for lawsuits. So let's make sure you have airtight contracts that have provisions that protect you.
Oh.
That is awesome.
And sometimes I'll be candid with the clients, and I'll be candid here. Sometimes the best alternative is just to settle right up front, because you have to look at the dispute and the economics of it and say, which alternative gets me out of this the cheapest? And sometimes that's just paying.
Just write a check. Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Alan, one of the best things I love, every referral I've sent him, is he's always said, listen, here's what you are looking at in terms of money. And do you have the wherewithal and the savings and the ability to make these economics work? That's what he's referring to when he says the economics of a lawsuit can take a heavy toll on savings and all that. So he walks you through that process before you do anything.
Right, and then the other problem that, as it relates to title, that we've been seeing a lot lately, is title fraud, where the seller, they may be on title to the property, but they didn't lawfully or rightfully gain title to the
Through
property.
like an uninsured deed or like
Well, so for example, we have a case recently, and the district attorney's office is now getting involved, where the deed transferring the title to the seller, the seller in the transaction. Well, if you look at the deed, the grantors and the date of the deed and the date of the notary stamp, the grantors were dead at the time. They weren't even alive.
Oh my God.
They had
Holy
predeceased the date of the deed
So it's hard
by 10 years.
It's hard to transfer a property from a pine box, right?
Well, that's
that's
it.
the
Or an urn. That's exactly
oh my
right.
goodness.
That's
Wow.
exactly right. And
That's
there's
troubling.
it was a they were notarized signatures.
Wow.
And then lo and behold, then the people that the family of the that should be on title, they step forward and then they assert a superior claim, and then the actual owner of the property, which is the C buyer, then turns around and says, "Oh my God, what do I do? Do I have title insurance?" And then you hope there's title insurance, and that's common. We're seeing that a lot.
Right. And these deeds,
dirtbag move.
just typically, I just want to ask for our audience, do you see like a average time date? Like, because nowadays I feel like it would be a little harder to get a fraudulent deed passed. So, I mean, hopefully now, or are you seeing them dated recently?
Well, it's there is no limit to man's ingenuity to defraud his fellow man.
Oh, that's
And-
so unfortunate.
well said.
And so you see it take all different forms. Another form is where you see testamentary documents, where you see trusts that have been forged. Now, albeit a lot of these are supposed to be notarized, and they are notarized, but a lot of the notary stamps are just wrong. They're just the notary lost their stamp, it was stolen, or you got a notary that's
A
in
dirty
on it.
notary.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's just,
I wish these guys are geniuses. I wish they just go cure cancer or something.
Oh my gosh.
if they put their energy that they put
something
into the
positive.
fraud into something positive, the world would be a better place.
Well,
And that's why it's important to have title insurance, to have everything go through
you
that.
heard it here first.
and
And you need smart guys like Alan to walk you through the
Exactly.
process if you're in those kind of transactions. It just bodes well to have a Sherpa through the process that's been there, seen it, and knows how to protect you. Well, thank you, Alan, for coming in. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience here?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Everybody, if your real property isn't becoming to you, you should be coming to us. Alan Enochs with the Enochs Law Group.
I love
Nice.
it.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys. Until
guys.
next time. Bye.
Thank you.